You guys just were brainstorming and said, my name's Dan Vanderquin, I'm kind of helping with this process and as much as I can, but you guys just brainstormed for this idea. Can someone explain to me what the concept is of this documentary that you guys, the segment in this documentary that you guys are going to be producing?
Well, we're looking at like the development of airplanes from like World War I, like how it started with like aeronautical photography and then kind of like all the fighter planes, and we're also looking at the legacy, so like how now we have like drones and yeah, and we're meant to interview someone from the Flanders Museum in Belgium, and we're looking at someone else as well to interview.
So just expand a little bit for me on the aerial photography part, how it was used in World War I, or how it's evolved into drones today. Both. Yeah. Okay, in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. I just wanted to know what your segment was, because I understand there's 5 schools. You all are doing 10 minutes, and which is fine. 10 minutes is a good amount of time. You'll be able to tell a story in 10 minutes and get your point across for sure. So I think she is getting some clips ready, but I'm just going to go. You guys read this, what makes a good history documentary thing, and so I went over this as well. I'm actually producing a World War II documentary right now, but it's not as historic as it is. It's a love story that takes place during World War II. It's of my own grandparents here in The Hague, and what they went through throughout the war and how they fell in love during the war and then immigrated to the United States and had my dad, and then I came out of it. So I keep saying that without World War II happening, it's just a different angle. Without World War II happening, I wouldn't exist. So it's kind of what I've been working on for years. So that's how I kind of got involved with this. And my wife is Leah Vanderkooy, who is the counselor downstairs. So I've been doing things with Yorona, and you probably see my face here more often. So, and I want to help you guys as much as I can, but I also freelance and work for CNN, so I'm not as available as what I might like to be at times. So I went through these notes that she wrote. There's all good points in here, everything that I agree with, everything that's basically the most important thing that you guys have to remember in producing this documentary is that the story is compelling. That's the most important thing. Everything else you can kind of figure out along the way, like in terms of graphics or creating, finding photos, especially with something from World War I. There's a lot of photos that exist. There's a lot, probably you'll be able to find a lot of old black and white film footage of these actual planes from World War I. If you know where to look, and even as simple as just typing it in on YouTube, you probably will be surprised at what you come up with that you can get your hands on. It might take some emails, it might take some, sweet talking to whoever owns the footage. But as long as you clear it and you get the okay that you guys can use it, that's the stuff that will make your story the best, in my opinion. But again, it starts with having the story, which it sounds like you have. So going back to what you guys are doing, is there a specific story, or is this just a general, like, are we talking, do you have any one plane or one fighter pilot or one, it wasn't a drone, or it wasn't I'm thinking of like a surveillance plane. What type of aircraft are you going to be focusing on?
Yeah, specifically the surveillance planes.
The surveillance planes. So what might be interesting would be to find a pilot or a family of a pilot, or find the name of a pilot, or a story from a pilot that flew one of these planes, and maybe there's some story surrounding that. These are just ideas I'll throw out at you.
Do you mind if I take notes on my laptop?
Please, yeah. Because the technical part we'll talk about after this, the technical part, which is obviously the cameras, the audio, editing, and all of that. That stuff is important, but I think like what we want to drive across is the story is the most important part, and you want to keep it as historically accurate. You have to keep it as historically accurate as you can, otherwise we're fake news and making things up as we go. So finding the pilot and knowing that these stories are real, or finding like a mission. A mission would be another possible angle that you could use, you know, a specific mission where a pilot flew to find out where to bomb such and such. Who knows? I'm a big fan of these old German cameras, the Leicas. And when I was younger, I worked in a film lab, a film store in Florida. And there was a guy that came in, and we got to talking, and he said he was a pilot during World War II, and he had actually gotten the assignment to bomb the Lights factory, because at the time they were using these factories to build things for war. So this was a prime target for the Allies and for everybody to bomb wherever these war machines were being built or whatnot. So he had his assignment was to bomb this factory. He said it broke his heart because he was such a fan of these cameras, and as the plane took off and they were in the air, he got the all clear sign that the factory was clear and they didn't have to bomb it. So it's finding stories like that that have like a really interesting story that you guys might be able to research and find, like I said, a specific, you know, whatever that falls in the category of this direction that you guys are going. So that's the biggest thing I think that you want to take away from this, is the story being compelling. Because the technical stuff we'll go over, and it's all technical. It's pretty, you know, black and white. So let's see. Did you want to show the clips?
Yeah.
Yep.
So which one do you want to see first?
Show the Wyatt Earp one, since I saw you guys wrote down drones, and I know, do you guys have a drone?
Still saving them.
Yeah.
My dad has one.
Yeah. But is that something you guys are thinking about using in this?
I haven't thought about that.
Okay. Just because you're doing air.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You start getting into drones, you have to get clearance and stuff like that. But you guys are at school, so you have a lot more leeway.
But the point is that aeronautical photography can lead to drones. In fact, they even had drones in World War I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meaning unmanned.
Unmanned drones that were
Yeah,
doing
I
surveillance.
don't know.
That's interesting. It's good. It's a good point. So that would be another, just another thought off the top of my head would be, like you said, you're starting the evolution of how it was piloted airplanes that were doing these missions, but yet at the time, even during World War I, there were unmanned missions that were going into enemy territory and taking these photographs, which once you start researching, you'll see some of these photographs, they're incredible, like places that they went, and the cameras that they were able to use. These cameras were like this big, mounted on the bottom of airplanes, and they would fly as high as they could to where they were out of the line of fire, and these cameras would just roll film, like you see in movies, and they're just constantly taking all these photos.
And one other little point about the story is that the whole point of this is the technological developments until today and the legacy, which also includes the ethical aspects of it. So,
Right.
you know, aeronautical photography led to archaeological investigations, good. It led to
Right.
drones, good and bad.
Right. Yeah, and so if you're going to get the bad in, then you got to also think about things that have been uncovered because of this technology. Like, you know, what would be an example of something bad that has been discovered by using these surveillance things? You know, I'm sure there's aspects of, you know, tribes and places that they use in the Amazon forest that now they've uncovered these tribes, or like you said, archaeological, you know, photography, where it's easier to find out where, you know, landscaping. But then also, even just the use now on a positive side is how in this day and age, 2017, with global warming and how important that is, they're able to now monitor icebergs, how much is of a decrease or increase in land, and all through these drones or through this type of photography. So it's a very interesting topic that you guys have. So.
So here's the...
You don't control it, so you can stop it.
So this is an obvious helicopter or drone shot that would be something good. You guys could.
Wyatt Earp had never belonged anywhere. He was born in Monmouth, Illinois in 1848, the third of Nicholas and Virginia Earp's 5 sons. But Nicholas was a roamer. He dragged his family across the West, from Illinois to Iowa to Missouri and back, only to pull up roots again for the crossing to California.
This would be good for you guys too, maps.
The
Maps are huge.
generous way to describe Nicholas Earp, Wyatt Earp's father, was that he was colorful, that he was larger than life. The more accurate way to describe him, or at least to round out the picture, is that he was a deadbeat. He skipped out on debts. He was a drinker. He was something of a bully. I think that being Nicholas Earp's son was not an easy thing to be.
Adversity and isolation hardened the bonds between the Earp brothers. So when Virgil and James left to fight for the Union in 1861, 13-year-old Wyatt was desperate to go along.
Shots like this,
As it
right
was,
here, let me pause
Wyatt had to
this.
stay behind. He would spend his...
A lot of times in documentaries you'll see reenactments or things being recreated or whatever. I don't think you guys will have to really worry about that. But we were talking earlier, a shot like that, just a long pan of an area, like in your case it could be an airport, where these planes used to take off, or landscapes of where they used to photograph over. That stuff is, to me, it's more impactful to have just a nice, slow shot well, and a camera from today, than to force like something being recreated or, you know, put together, taking like a quick clip from that time period and making it slow motion. Just recreate it. You're looking for things to cover the voiceover, which is telling the story, or the interview, which is telling the story. And we'll talk a little bit about that after this, because the interview, next to having the story, the interview is going to be, and the voiceover is going to be what drives your 10 minutes. And you're going to have to decide, 10 minutes is kind of a short amount of time in terms of putting too many interviews in and having a voiceover. You may want to decide if you want to do this in what we call nat sound, which is only letting the interviews tell the story. You wouldn't have a voiceover. It would just be completely interview covered with shots like this, or shots, black and white photos. Like I said, the maps are going to be huge for you guys because you're not going to obviously be able to show you know, aerial footage of where some of these planes flew over. But by taking a map, and if anybody's creative and good with graphics, if anybody work on After Effects or anything like that, even just, there's ways around it. If you start thinking outside the box in terms of, okay, well we don't know how to do this on a computer, take the camera, take this map, find a map of Germany or a map of wherever it is that you're covering, get a little, like you've seen in Indiana Jones, a little model airplane that's kind of the same type of airplane. As long as you own it and you use it throughout your 10 minutes, it's completely random if you just put it in there for like one shot. You have this like map with this airplane. But if that becomes your format or your style for your 10 minutes, that's kind of the way you want to be thinking. Whatever the 10 minutes you're covering, keep the feel and the style the same. Don't, even with the interviews like this, if you watch these interviews, these are all shot in front of a black background or a similar background. You want to do that if you're interviewing 2 different people or 3 different people, whatever the number is that you guys are going to be doing the interviews with, keep the background similar. And I don't mean like, you know, obviously if you're interviewing someone in here, you have no choice but gray desks and a gray wall. But that's a format. So it's like, you are not putting anything in the background like a solid color. So you're owning that we're just filming these interviews on location wherever our subject is, whether it's in a classroom, an office, outside, whatever it is. But it will feel weird if you're doing like one interview and you're in a classroom, and one interview and you're in an office, and then all of a sudden you have this like green screen black background, and then you're bouncing back and forth, and one time they're looking at the camera and one time they're looking off the camera. Keep all of that the same. That's the stuff that's going to separate it to looking more professional than just a bunch of stuff thrown together. So especially when you have control. There are times where you just don't have any control because you're using archival footage. For instance, if you happen to come across an interview with a certain pilot or something, and he was, you know, it was a news report, and he's talking to the camera or whatever, but that's the only clip that you have, well, you have no choice, but that's what you use. But is anything that's in your control that you can keep similar, that's important. So you'll notice with these interviews that they all look the same, and that's good.
Formative years watching over his little brother Morgan.
Morgan appears to be a little bit more outgoing, a little friendlier, could get along with people. But for Wyatt,
this is another nice, just cover so that it's not interview.
He didn't get along with people very well.
Wyatt was with his family in California when news came of the Confederate surrender at Appomattox.
This is good. This is stuff you can find in archives.
The industrial
old
leviathan
newspaper
that had been
clippings.
created by the war,
Old
the
black
vast
and white
machinery of
photographs.
the federal government, the waves of immigration, all of the forces that had brought victory to the North were about to be unleashed in the West.
The victory of the Union in the American Civil War is a victory for the forces of incorporation for the West. But what happens after the Civil War surprises even those
This too.
dreaming
When you guys
of
font,
settling the West. because
that
it
we
happens
call
so
that
rapidly.
putting on a
But it
font
taking-
or a lower third.
For him to associate.
Whoever's editing this for you, make sure the graphics are all the same. You want to make sure that however you type, if you do 2 lines, the top line bold, the second line, you know, softer, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. There's no rules. Just make sure that throughout your 10 minutes that it fits that same, you know, style. Style is very important for a documentary.
With prostitutes.
Did I go back too far?
You can see from this.
I think you get the idea, right? We don't need to keep watching
Seems to have had on
it.
It
It gives
just goes
you,
wild for people.
and see with him, I can look at him and I can tell he's not looking directly at the camera. He's looking to a producer who's standing next to the camera. And to me, personally, I think that's more important. I think that's the best, that feels the best when you're watching it. I have seen it done really well where the subject is talking to the camera, but it's a little more uncomfortable for the subject. So whoever the person is that you're interviewing, people tend to freeze when they're looking at a camera and tend to be a lot more open when they're talking to a human being. And so for me, it's always been, you talk to me. So when I'm interviewing somebody, say like I'm interviewing you and this is the camera. Before we even hit record, before we even start, you and I just kind of talk, like, you know, what's your name? I'm telling you a little bit about what I'm doing, this and that, making them forget about this camera, that this camera even exists. And then I reassure them before I start, and I say, okay, don't worry about this camera. It's just you and me. We're having a conversation. I'm going to start out. I want you to spell your first and last name so that we have it for in the edit. We know for sure that your first and last name is spelled correctly. And then give me your title, and that's what's going to be on the second line. And you'll be amazed. The average person that freaks out about talking, like they're like, oh, I'm not good on camera. I'm not good at camera. Just spelling their name out, all of a sudden they're like, and then you get into that first question, and they're just like, oh, well, and then you can't shut them up. And so it's just like an icebreaker, and you'll find that helps you a lot going into this process, because it is awkward for people to talk on camera, just knowing that the camera is even there. So like I can tell, like his eyes, you can tell are looking just slightly off camera, and it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter if they look off this way or off this way. Or you got one looking off this way, one looking off this way. It doesn't matter. I mean, some people, like format-wise, for what their documentary is, they may compose their shot like to where everybody is way off center like this, and they're all looking to the right. And that's just their style. And that stuff, again, it's kind of like the font. Like whatever font you want to use for a graphic, it doesn't matter. There's no rules. It's just once you commit, commit. That's the biggest thing, because you can't go back after you've already started and be like, I mean, you can, but then you have to go back and you have to make that phone call. Oh, our interview was great, but I want to redo it because I changed my mind. And you don't want to, that's not a good idea. So if you guys have any questions, pop them out. Just chat. We're not live or anything. So any ideas or any questions?
We might be in a few minutes. It might work.
Oh, really? Okay. A good documentary raises more questions than answers. There's a myth that a good documentary film serves as proof or the ultimate explanation of something, even if audience members are left pondering at the end of the film credits, that can be an excellent outcome. That is very true. And I often always think as well, like when I watch documentaries, I can tell how good subconsciously I think the documentary is by after watching it, if I'm inspired to do anything, inspired to go work on my own documentary more, or inspired to go get a shot that something popped in my mind, or inspired to not litter and recycle because you just watched something that is very impactful or whatever. So keep that in mind too. With your topic, I think you're going to be more along the lines of, it's more historic and it's more, I mean, there's not really, you can get creative and maybe you'll come up with something about drones are very controversial these days. So maybe you decide to go that direction, maybe not. Whatever you guys decide, that will be good. So I'm just going through some of the notes. You guys have this so you can read it. I'm just saying some of the things that I liked. Going back to the style. This is an example, my own documentary, a lot of documentaries, it's taking these old photos, taking old film clips, taking graphics, taking maps, taking all this and combining it. But if you just are sitting there and you just cannot come up with, maybe that you can't get the rights to a photograph from World War I, maybe you can't get the rights to film footage or whatever. Once you get creative, and if you end up with, hey, we have 50 photographs, we have 50 still photographs, but we have no, film footage or whatever, there's nothing wrong with just using the photographs. And you guys you've seen Ken Burns documentaries? Ken Burns is a great example of this. A lot of his older documentaries, like he would do like a 12-hour documentary on baseball or a 12-hour documentary on jazz. A lot of his documentaries are nothing but beauty shots and old photographs. He won't even, if he doesn't have enough film clips or graphics or things like that, he'll just commit to. Ken Burns is a good one to watch for the history of, to get ideas and to be inspired about documentaries. And I've got a list of other ones. Michael Moore, you guys, that's on here. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Michael Moore. His style is different than a lot of documentary filmmakers, but he is very unique and very inspiring. But he's one that you get done watching. His documentaries to me are not like, I don't get done watching it and I'm like, I want to go make a documentary, because I don't want to do what he does. I don't want to piss people off and like go into like these corporate offices and be like, I'm here and I have this point to make. But I do get inspired to be like, I don't want to go and buy 50 pair of Nikes, or I don't want some child and so like those are topics that get you inspired in a different direction. I have a couple notes here about music. Music is extremely important in a documentary, either using it or not using it. And what I mean by that is I've seen documentaries that are shorter. It's kind of hard to have a documentary that's like 2 hours and not have any music. And I think you would want music. Music kind of drives the story, and it's very important to pick a style of music, and much like the way you film, and stick with that style of music. Meaning, if you find something soft and acoustic, guitar, another Ken Burns example is his National Park documentary. If you see that, he has one song that goes throughout all 12 hours of the documentary. It's one song. I mean, whoever wrote the song, is brilliant, because that song was used pretty much throughout all 12 episodes. But he uses it in a gentle way. And what I mean is, you don't want to have like a song like that, and then all of a sudden you bust into like rap beats or like a Metallica song or something. It just doesn't even fit. It's got to fit with what the story is. Meaning, if you're in a quiet interview where someone's talking about how they were inspired to become an airplane pilot, you want something softer and inspirational. So that's just something that you're going to have to.
We've just been joined by the kids from Croatia.
Hello, Croatia.
Okay. So I'm going to turn their volume down.
Okay.
But can you hear him when he talks?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
How do I look? Great.
Okay. Thanks.
Did someone say tired? It's true. So we've just been talking a little bit about, the way I understand it, you're all responsible for a 10-minute segment in this documentary. And we were discussing the importance of keeping the similar style. Now this documentary is a little unique because there's 5 different schools, each responsible for 10 minutes. So for me, in watching a documentary, I like to have the same style throughout the whole documentary. However, for one like this, where you have 5 different stories happening from 5 different countries and 5 different classrooms, I think it's good if each school has their own style and their own kind of flow and stick with that for their 10-minute segment. But that's just my opinion. Ultimately, you all can make the decision. I'm just, for me, like I said, keeping it consistent is always important to me for documentaries. But because we're dealing with so many different elements and so many different stories, there's not one subject that's flowing over throughout the 5 schools. So I think it's okay for you all to do your own style, for Rotterdam to do their own style, Germany to do their own style, and then it's all married together in one documentary. And then in between each segment, the final editor will put together text that says the next segment is from Germany, the next segment is from Croatia. That kind of opens the door to me rather than it just going from one into the other, into the other, into the other, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, they were filming this way, and now all of a sudden we're doing this, and we have no explanation for why it's different. Does that make sense? Am I speaking too fast?
To the volume, Carol?
I tend to do that.
So how do you do the volume?
Hold
They're
FN.
fixing the volume a second.
FN?
Yes, on the left side. And then up.
I don't see FN. You mean the keys F and N? Oh.
Do you guys have any questions? No. Okay.
Very clear so far.
Yep.
Okay.
Can we just have a second where we can kind of show each other who we are? Can you guys come up here so you can say hi to these people?
Here, just turn the camera. You guys stay there and just turn the camera right. So.
Okay, this is the group from the Netherlands. Could you just introduce yourselves quickly?
Hi. Hi guys.
Cringe.
Hi.
Hello.
Say your names.
Hi, my
And
name
where
is
you're from.
My name is Diana. I'm from Russia. My name is Priya, and I'm from Mauritius. I'm Noor, and I'm from Holland.
I'm Lizzie, I'm from Holland as well.
I'm Stefan, I'm from Russia.
Hi, I'm Rick, I'm from the Netherlands.
Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm from Holland as well. I don't think they can see you.
And this is Ivan. He's the teacher. Say hi, Ivan.
Hi.
Okay. We've filmed a lot of this already. We will send you what you missed. But thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, just physically raise your hand, and we will answer them because Dan will answer them, and our students will also like to hear what questions you have as well. Okay? Maybe why don't you introduce yourselves as well? We see all of you together, so just say, hi, go ahead, start it. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Okay, now we're going to turn you around so you can watch the show.
You want your light back on?
I will. So you can just direct it to them.
Okay.
Direct it to them.
So you guys had written down.
Oh, we gotta turn that volume down.
Yeah, they're gonna fix this volume for you. You guys had written down a script. and I think script is very important in terms of like direction and ideas. But for documentaries, I tend to steer away from pre-production, going in with a script, like what you, except for a VO, like I like to gather first and then see what I come back with, and you write the script, like the voiceover, to what you have footage of. It helps you, especially in terms of things that you may not have footage for, being able to direct yourself after. So it's good to have like a storyboard, an idea of the direction that you want to go, which it sounds like you guys already have, kind of what directs the topic, and you know, the idea of getting nice shots and this and that, and then, you know, again, having a vague idea, and even writing the script as you film is a good idea. It just comes down to preference and what you guys are comfortable with in terms of your topic. Can I ask you guys what your topic is?
You'll have to turn the volume up to hear them.
Oh, sorry.
That's because there'll be feedback.
Their topic is spies.
Spies. Oh, interesting.
Stuff like
Okay.
that.
So for their topic being spies, that's another one where, to me the most
Code breaking.
Code breaking. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. There's a lot of stories that you guys can come up with. Like, you can come up with one story based on a specific spy and what they did during this time period and how that evolved throughout the war. Just thinking in terms of like what's more impactful. Maybe there was like I'm going to use a Dutch term here. They had what the Dutch underground during World War II, and that was kind of the vague what they called everybody that was in the resistance, you know, working against the Germans during World War II. You could take that similar topic or idea as like a specific story that happened during this time period, or maybe a specific spy, rather than it just the broad scope of spies in general. But it's, again, this is ultimately up to you guys and what you guys come up with in research and what direction you all decide as a group to kind of do. Do you guys have any ideas yet? Okay. Well, I'll leave it up to you. I'm just here giving my input for what I think with these ideas, and here to answer any questions in terms of the technical side of the filming, audio, editing, ideas for cover, because that's always a hard thing to come up with. Is you're doing a documentary about World War I, what are you going to cover it with if you don't have lots of photographs and video clips? And we've talked a little bit about this earlier. Maps are really good to use. Long shots of areas where things happened, like, you know, landscapes, or in your case it could be very nice looking alleyways, or things that are like where spies would hang out. I'm just making it up as I go, but like, you know, I'm thinking of spies being like, you know, we talked a little bit about reenactments and how it's kind of a touch and go thing. Sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's not done well. It's your decision. I'm not a huge fan of reenactments. They're not. So yeah, in your case, you may just research and find the story of a certain spy during World War I and be able to tell this story in 10 minutes. You know, someone named such and such, how they got involved in becoming a spy, what some of the things that they did during the war, some of the risks that they took, some of the information that they uncovered, and what happened to them in the end. Either they survived or were captured, or whatever the story is. And that's just an idea. So you all take it and do your thing. But if you have any questions, send them our way. Okay? Do you guys have any questions? No.
So maybe we can now talk about the technical
Okay.
things that we talked about.
So the technical side of it, we started talking a little bit about it again with format. It's very important, like for your 10-minute segment, to have the 10 minutes look and feel the same. for your entire 10 minutes. And you don't have to worry about what Germany's doing or Denmark or Croatia. You just want your 10-minute segment to have the same feel. If it's long, you know, beauty shots with voiceover, telling a story covered with interviews and old maps, use that throughout. And then Germany will do their own and Croatia will do their own. And then somebody here, this is where the ultimate edit is happening, correct? Whoever the editor is going to have to marry all 5 of those stories together with graphics in between explaining that this is the Rotterdam International Secondary School's topic and what they discovered in their 10-minute segment, however you're going to word that. But that just will explain each 10-minute segment. That's what my suggestion is. It's ultimately your choice. But if this were my project, that's the way that I would do it, because it's going to be a bit of a nightmare for you guys to come up with your format and then have Croatia agree that that's the format that they want to use, and then have Germany agree, and then everybody film it the same and use the same black and white photo, the same moves on photos and the same, because once you get into edit, especially with photos, you can do anything. You know, I've seen great documentaries that are done, the kid stays in the picture. Have any of you seen that documentary? They're able to take, because, you know, a lot of times you have one photograph and you have to try and cover 30 seconds of voiceover or whatever, but all you have is one photograph. Well, they figured that you can take it into Photoshop and almost make it 3-dimensional. And if you can master that technique, you can cover a lot more space when you are editing this, you know? Because otherwise it's just a flat image, and you'll find out really quick when you're in edit that you get above 10, 15 seconds of that image and it starts to be a snooze fest. And you gotta have movement. You gotta have something moving it along.
But I've seen that in World War I documentaries where they do make it 3D. They take a picture and they make it 3D.
Yeah, and if anybody's good with Photoshop, that's a great skill to use, making that, like breaking that apart, one image, or taking like your subject of the photo, like in your case, maybe you have a photograph of a young lady that's a spy, and she's standing and there's on a street and there's, you know, soldiers behind, or whatever the case is, and you pull out the image of the lady, the spy, and you push into that, but you keep everything else. It's kind of just making it 3-dimensional. Does that make sense? It helps with covering more time in a documentary. But with 10 minutes, I think you guys are going to be I think everyone will be pretty good. You'll actually be shocked how quick the 10 minutes will go as well. I mean, you're not looking to cover even if you start getting beauty shots in there and you're covering, I think some of these shots we were watching were almost 20 seconds. So you start thinking of 20 seconds, especially in your case where you're using aerial shots a lot. You get a good 20-second aerial shot in there, that's a lot of cover that you guys can use. So keep that in mind. That might be the style that you guys want to use is, you know, maybe somebody where you're filming does have access to a drone camera, and you can mix the drone shot with a map. And, you know, these are just ideas, but those are things that like I would be thinking about now. Yes?
Could you talk about the technical aspects, about what they should do on site in their own countries and what they should be bringing here and how to get it here?
You guys will be filming on what kind of camera?
We still don't really know.
We still don't know. I would suggest that if anybody has a DSLR, like a Canon or a Nikon or a Panasonic, it's one that looks like the old still cameras, kind of like this, but they film. They now make them where you can film HD video on them. Mm-hmm. They're the best. It's gonna give you the most film look. These cameras right here they're just, you know, grandma cameras. Like you just hit a button and you film. But if that's all you have, but even like again going back to format, there's no rules. If you want to use a camera like this, that's great. Just make sure that if you're using pans, or if that's the camera you mount to a drone, stick with that. And then once you get everything, I would have one laptop that is who's going to be editing the film for you guys? You two. So do you each have a laptop?
We got one, yeah.
You each do. Okay, perfect. I would mirror everything because always better to be safe than sorry. So as soon as you finish filming, say like you film for 2 days, at the end of each day, I would dump the card onto your laptop, then I would dump the card onto your laptop, and I would just create a folder. I mean, you guys I'm sure know how to create the folders and put it, and you know, this is shots of such and such, shots of such and such, and then you're going to be editing on Adobe Premiere, which is great. That's the only thing to edit on as far as I'm concerned. Are you guys editing on Adobe Premiere?
They are.
You are? Okay, good. Yeah, because those will marry together. You know, you can use the same, obviously we're shooting in 1080, right? I would shoot 1080p. Do you guys know what that is? What are you guys going to be filming on? What kind of cameras?
DSLR.
DSLR, good. I personally like the look of 24p, 1080, 24p. Is that possible? It really gives it a much more film look. It's 24 frames a second, and that's what film was actually created to shoot. So it gives it a lot better of a film feel. And then when you edit it in Premiere, edit it in 24p as well. And we'll make sure that RISS edits in 24p. We'll make that the standard, 24p. Because I assume every school will be filming on a DSLR, and that's the best format to film on, would be 1080 24p. And then when you guys get finished, you're going to export your final 10 minutes, and I think the best way to do it for the people here at RISS would be if you could export QuickTime, 1080p, 24p, QuickTime, high res, and export one version. I'll write this down so you have it too, so you can send it to all of the schools. Just so that everything marries correctly for the final full-length documentary, I would make sure that everything is 1080 24p. And if you guys do that and RISS does that, and they can get the other schools to do that, just you exporting the final QuickTime, they should be able to just drop that in a final timeline on Premiere to where it's like they have one school, exported final clip. One school, exported final clip. One school, exported final clip, and so on. And then there shouldn't, yes?
The question is, say a school, like Adobe Premiere we don't have to worry about, but the others are not using Adobe Premiere, I don't think. So if they have a clip, should they not put the sound on and then put it on here?
You guys don't have to worry about this because you guys are on the same edit as Rotterdam. What I would say to you two, you're going to be editing the final, the whole feature. I would say they should export to you 2 QuickTimes. One QuickTime final version, high res, of what they think with the audio levels as they think, just to save you time. You might listen to it and watch it and it's fine. Then all you have to do is insert it. But I would also have them export a clean audio version. So maybe tell them to put, actually I take that back, have them export 2 audio versions. Have them, just to keep it easy so you're not having to deal with OMFs and audio design and all of that. Have them export one AIFF, which is just the audio QuickTime version of music, and then one AIFF of sound. And then you can put that in the timeline. It'll marry perfectly to the QuickTime video, and you can raise the audio of the music if you need to, or lower it. Oftentimes it's going to need to be lowered because a lot of people put the audio a lot higher, and it's going to make your life a lot simpler. And that's what I think you want. Just as long as they export the same format of the video, which is the 1080 24p. That's going to be the key, because you will notice the difference if you guys are shooting in 24p. And again, it's not a huge deal because you guys are all doing your own segment, so it doesn't matter. If you were doing one full-length feature, I would say you have no choice, but it has to be 24p, and they're just going to have to figure it out over there. So, okay? Yes?
So I think, as far as the technical stuff, I think that's about what we really needed to know.
Okay.
That was a big part.
Okay.
what do we do with these videos that are coming in? How can we coordinate them and make
Yeah.
it look like a seamless kind of?
Yeah, I think if you
show?
two mirror each other in terms of in terms of storage. I would put it on a hard drive, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys are gonna be getting a ton of footage, like just in what you guys are filming for your project, and then what every other school is sending to you is gonna be a lot of footage. So I would keep, how much space do you have on your laptops?
I have a lot of hard drives.
Okay, then I would, the most important thing is just having one backup. You know, like that, because you never know with hard drives what happens, and you know, one fails and you've got everything on there, you're sunk. So as long, and I'm sure you guys sound like you know that already.
We'll get some sticks that you can keep.
You'll need more than sticks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be hard drives because like.
All right,
if
then we'll get a
there's-
hard drive for you to
Yeah,
keep it on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So good. You guys have any more edit questions, like formats, or do you guys have any edit questions in terms of the format and how to shoot it and audio, anything like that? Oh, I will say this, one thing that will be very important is when you film your interviews, you guys too, when you're filming interviews, if you can do you have access to lav mics or Zoom recorders to be able to split the audio for the interview out separately? You can't just use the on-camera microphones, especially for the DSLRs, because they're horrible. So you're going to have to, someone who, if you can get access to a separate recorder, like a little, this is what I often use, it's just a little, it's called a Zoom, and it's a digital recorder, and I set this, like if I'm interviewing somebody at a desk, I'll set this on the desk. This is the best way to do it. The other option is, I don't know what budgets you guys have, but this is a lav kit that I have, and it's these little, one of these mounts to the camera, and one of these mounts to the person that you're interviewing, and then you put these. This is a lav mic, and this is the. So for instance, this attachment would be under my shirt, and I would keep it low enough to where it's not in the shot, but it's picking up the audio. And this is perfect audio. It doesn't need much adjustment. Some of these, you can pick these up in different camera stores or whatever. They're not terribly expensive. I don't know what budgets are or whatever, but that, or like I said, this is the other version, is just using a digital recorder. Some people, and I'm not suggesting this because I would never do this, but some people I've seen record on the iPhone. It's a pretty good mic. This would be my absolute last case scenario, like if I were somewhere and I didn't have my camera equipment with me, but I had this, I would record audio on this. Just a standard iPhone. But again, last resort for me, because it's still not as good as one of these. So you guys, I guess you'll have to all decide what way you're going to go. But audio is very, very important, because if you start, the interview can look as cool as can be, but if it sounds bad, that's the only thing anybody's going to hear. So I would focus very much attention on making sure the audio is good. That's why when you hire a camera crew for filming out in the field, you get two guys. You get a cameraman, his only responsibility is to work the camera, and you have an audio guy. His only responsibility is to record audio and make sure that audio is perfect. Because if it's not, that's going to be the mess. Yes? Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. You guys have any questions? Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, that works.